Hey everyone, how are you doing? So, I want to talk to you today about something very exciting, which is the three queens. Now, if you are clever, you're all clever, you might have noticed that in the past, and lots of you have attended, I have run three workshops that have been called the Pleasure Queen, the Shadow Queen, and the Quantum Queen over the last year. And so many of you took part. And I have decided to now, hey Sam, hi Dione, I have now decided to bring together all of these three layers of queen that we work through in the workshop. So if you attended the workshops, you're going to love this. If you attended one workshop, you're going to love this. If you haven't attended any, don't worry. But I want to talk through these three stages with you today, because these three stages have been a really important part of my alignment journey, of my life, of my business, and also for my clients as well. So, what are the three queens? I'm going to introduce you to them straight away. They are the Pleasure Queen, the Shadow Queen, and the Quantum Queen. Now, these are three key queen archetypes that I have discovered through my own personal experience of this work, that these are the stages that we need to move through when we are working with the quantum, when we are working with energy. We need to move through these in this order to enable us to powerfully shift and magnetize our desires to us and work with the quantum field and manifest and work towards our big dreams and goals, and keep ourselves embodied in that future version of ourselves, keep our nervous systems regulated, and have the practices in place to look at our shadows and to keep us grounded. So let's start with, and this work just lights me up. So I'm here, I'm just gonna just want to talk about it, share it with you all. So firstly, Pleasure Queen. Now, why is she called a Pleasure Queen? Why is she just not a happy queen or a grounded queen or a whatever the word is you want to use? Now, how many things do we see this thing is for your well-being, this thing is for your healing, this thing is like a habit you need to get in place daily, like the meditation, the journaling, the walking, the whatever that habit might be. But how often do we look at this from that pleasure angle? Because it is not just about how do we get better, how do we heal, how do we have steps in place to be our best selves. It's not just about that. It is about taking it to this Pleasure Queen vibe, this Pleasure Queen level. Now, these three steps, I also, as well as applying them to my life, I also accidentally found that these worked with a client as well. So my client Rose, she came in to work with me, and the first month all we did were the activities that I'm going to talk about in Pleasure Queen. The second month we worked through Shadow Queen, and then naturally the Quantum Queen came on. We didn't even do anything, like it just naturally happened, going through Pleasure Queen, going through Shadow Queen, and I'm going to tell you why that is in a moment. So Pleasure Queen is not just about how do we be the best we can be, how do we have these tools for our well-being. It is about how do I have the optimal joy and flow and pleasure today. What feels, so I put this on today, like this fur, like it feels cozy, it feels nourishing. I've got my cup of tea as usual. It feels good to me. And that is what the Pleasure Queen is. Not just how do we feel good today? What can we do for our well-being today? How do we feel nourished? How do we feel pleasure? How do we feel joy and like those elevated emotions. Okay, now here's the super geeky bit. The pleasure queen is important because it keeps us grounded. And you might think pleasure, grounding, like how does this connect together? So it has been shown by the latest science in positive psychology that when we have pleasure practices in place, we increase our levels of neurochemicals that not only make us feel good, but they create positive resilience in the brain. So I experienced this firsthand when I first went to live on my own after my divorce. And every day I was dancing, I was doing pleasure practices, and it moved me through that time. I didn't think about what do I need for my well-being today? Like, what do I need to get me through this divorce? It was just like, right, choose joy, choose pleasure, body first every day. Like, what is it that my body wants today? Okay, that could sometimes just be tea. Okay, so this is Pleasure Queen, and the science shows that actually one of the biggest things, and I was in London last week at a conference about this, one of the biggest things that moves us through change, that creates innovation, that creates positive resilience, is positive psychology, which is ultimately what's underneath all of these pleasure practices. So when we bring those positive emotions into our lives, we create that resilience so we can move through anything that we're moving through, move towards our big dreams and our goals because we're grounded in those practices. And another thing about the pleasure queen is she really embodies like who she is in her future vision. So I imagine if you focus now on your future vision, I bet none of you would say, oh no, it doesn't feel good in my future vision. For probably all of us, like our future vision feels good. Like, I don't think I've ever said, oh yeah, I want to manifest this thing, but that doesn't feel good. Okay, so when we tap into these feelings, not only is this helping us on a neuroscience level, I've been talking to my quantum alignment ladies about this a lot, like the positive psychology practices, it not only helps us on that neuroscience level, but it helps us to work in the quantum because that we're stepping into those feelings of that future version of us. And this is what I did when I manifested my life that I have now. This was my 10-year vision. And I manifested that in 2 years. And I didn't do that through any like magic secret or anything like that. I literally like journaled every day on that future vision. What was I doing? What was I doing? What was I feeling? What was around me? What were the types of activities in my day? And I embodied that. I embodied that. So like, what do you have around you right now? Like in your space, like this could even be like, wow, I've got loads of plants in my future vision. Okay, we'll bring plants into your space now if that makes you feel good. Like it might be a certain type of music or a certain type of fragrance or a certain type of dressing. So this fur waistcoat, I'm sure you've heard me tell this story before. No, I can't put it back on my chair. I just wear it on my chair because I love to just like fall back into it. This fur waistcoat, this black fur, was what future me was wearing. So I went and bought it. I was like, right, I need to find that exact thing. I managed to find this on Vinted, like the actual thing that my future self was wearing. So this is not just about like, la la la, I'm doing these well-being practices and I'm ticking them off and I'm, you know, I'm meditating, like I'm meditating the fuck out of this, you know, it's not that. It's like, how do I really embody that? And that's what I was doing. I was embodying that version of myself in my big vision that had the house by the sea, that had the dogs that she walked on the beach, like all of that, the soulmate partner, like all of that was because I went into that vision and then I embodied it. So this is what Pleasure Queen is about. It is about that embodiment, the neuroscience, the positive psychology, and the embodiment of it. Okay, we need to bring it into the body. And I think sometimes when we think about like the neuroscience, it's very head focused, and like we know this stuff works in the brain, we know the brain is like super powerful, but we need to actually bring that fully into the body by embodying that, by showing up as that version of ourselves. And this is what the pleasure queen is all about. She's about like just pleasure first. This morning I woke up and I said, I just feel a bit uncomfortable. I can't put my finger on what it is. My body, I feel a bit like Goldilocks. Like I'm not warm enough. I'm like, my clothes don't feel right today. Like something's just, I just feel a bit uncomfortable. So it's like, right, okay, like let's just put, before we do anything else today, body first. What do you need? Hot shower. What clothes do you need to wear? Like what feels good against your skin? What do you need to eat today? Do you need to move your body today? Do you need to get out in the sun today? Like, yeah, just that moment to moment body choice is what the Pleasure Queen is all about. And this is what we did in the Pleasure Queen workshop. I ran this at the back end of 2022. This was completely synchronistic. I didn't deliberately run these 3 workshops, Pleasure Queen, Shadow Queen, Quantum Queen, like in that order, thinking they were the 3 stages. I just ran them because in that moment it lit me up. It was what was coming through. And now I've realised, and I'm bringing these all into Quantum Femme, I've realised that these are the 3 stages, and these are the 3 stages that my client Rose and I work through. And she naturally shifted into the Quantum Queen stage by the end of it, because we'd done the Pleasure Queen, we'd done the Shallow Queen, and then we could work with energy. And this is something I see a lot. Like there's so many incredible women out there doing incredible work, like working with energy, but not having the Pleasure Queen and not having the shadow practices. Like I'm in shock, like the amount of conversations I have with women who are like healers, and I talk to them about shadow work and they're like, well, what's that? Or, oh no, I don't want to look at those parts of myself. It's like, if you're going to be working with energy, like you need to transmute that shadow, because if you don't, you're going to be passing that energy on to your clients, and your nervous system is going to be taking a hit because you're going to be being triggered by more in your reality. So Shadow Queen, let's come on to Shadow Queen. So who is the Shadow Queen? So she is the dark feminine. She is the wild feminine. And she knows that the way to the light, the way to the whole, love and light, we get told. The way to the love and light is through the dark, through her shadows, through the parts of herself that she has pushed down for so long. And so many of us as children are told, like, we mustn't be angry and we mustn't have rage and we mustn't, we must be quiet. I mean, for goodness sake, like me and my sister, when we were little, we were in a cafe and we were being really quiet and well behaved. And a lady came up to us and gave us a £1 coin each and said, you are the quietest girls in here, have a £1 coin for an ice cream. So I was like literally rewarded financially for being quiet and keeping my mouth shut. So this stuff gets like ingrained in us from such a young age. And when I was going, oh Joe, you're having a coffee with me, amazing, cheers Joe. Love that. So when I was going through, like the end of 2022 was a really tough year for me. And this was when I really needed to step into my Shadow Queen. So I'd gone through my divorce. I had loads of clients that I was working with in 2021 that had started to fall away. And the reason they'd fallen away was because they were ready. Like they'd made huge shifts and they were ready to move on. They were ready to kind of spread their wings and fly away. But because I was going through like a really tough year, like with my divorce, we then had a neighbour who was just horrific. It made it really unsafe for us to be in our home. And I also had a business partner who asked me, like when I was at the lowest of my low and going through my divorce, she asked me to sign my business over to her, and she tried to take my business. And when I said no, she psychically attacked me. So I was going through, like, plus all the trauma bond stuff that I was then going through as well. So 2022 was a really tough year. And I reached the end of 2022 and I was just like, what the actual fuck am I doing? Like, I'm just done with this shit. Like, I'm done with it. I'm struggling. I don't understand like what's going on with me, like how I'm feeling, like, and I just had all this rage and all this anger, and it would come out like it would come out just before my period, in perfect alignment with the hormones, and I just had all this rage. And it was like, this is wrong, you're not meant to feel like this. And all these shadows came to the surface of, good girls don't get angry, good girls don't have rage. Wow, think about the effect you're having on other people. Like, all of these shadows came right up to the surface. And what was actually happening was, I had been through a lot. Like, it was, for me, it was kind of like, I just had to keep going and like keep showing up. It was kind of survival. Like, when I had to leave my marriage and I had nowhere to live, and then I lived in holiday homes. So, and the way I was treated and the way I'd been treated for years, and like, you know, being, you know, parented as a neurotypical child and I was neurodivergent, like all of that. Anyway, all of that came right out at the end of 2022, and I was like, oh my God. And I basically just needed to give it space. It just needed space, it just needed a voice, that inner child, that inner teen in me, my inner teen as well. Like, do not forget your inner teen. We're going to be doing, in Quantum Femme, we're going to be doing shadow work on inner child and inner teen. Like, that is so important, like with the hormones, with the rage, because that's when our inner teen, like that's when our hormones are coming online and we're trying to make sense of like our cycles, and these strong emotional reactions that are coming out in us. So our inner teen is just as important as our inner child work as well. So do not forget your inner teen. But all this stuff was coming to the surface, and I basically just needed to, suddenly got really bright over that side of my face. I just needed to give it some space. I just needed to give it a voice and actively participate in letting that anger and rage out. So I did sacred rage. So I did somatic practices. I did breath work. I did shaking. I've got a baseball bat in my spare room and I whacked some pillows with a baseball bat. I allowed that sacred rage in me to come out. And then once it came out and it had a voice and it had a space, everything just fell into alignment. And I fully, for the first time in my life, like fully accepted all parts of myself, the undesirable parts, the shadows. And I could see that gift within my shadows as well, because the gifts of anger, right, mean that we can set boundaries, we can say no, we can be fiery and like use that anger as a force for good. That is like such a potent and powerful energy, but we shut it down. And this is what moving through this Shadow Queen stage is all about. Like, what are the dark, undesirable parts of ourselves? And what do we see in others as well? So in Quantum Femme, we're going to do like this mirror exercise as well, in terms of what we see in others, how others trigger us, or just like repeating patterns. So for me, it was narcissists, like repeating patterns of narcissistic behavior showing up. And that was where I needed to step more in my Shadow Queen, to actually look at those shadow gifts within me. So we need to get the grounded practices in place through Pleasure Queen, and not just grounding, not just, yes, Joe, not just grounding, not just well-being, not just like, la, 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 I'm doing my meditation, but how can you feel amazing today? What would feel good for you? What would feel pleasurable for you? What would feel joyful and expansive for you today? And what does your body need today? Like, this just feels good, like wearing my fur. Like, what does your body need today? And this is, you know, I think we get so focused on what's wrong and how do I fix it? How do I heal this thing? How do I get out of burnout? And we've got it all wrong. Like, we need to be starting with the pleasure, which is why we are starting with Pleasure Queen, okay? So Pleasure Queen is more like the light side, the light feminine, more of like the kind of, you know, dancing with the light, positive emotion, positive energy. And then we've got the Shadow Queen, more the negative, the dark feminine, the sacred rage, the dark, you know, sexual aspects of ourselves. So we've got this balance, and then when we have this balance, we move into Quantum Queen. So who is Quantum Queen? Who is she? So Quantum Queen is the embodiment of working with all energies, all timelines, all dimensions, and working directly with Source and the quantum field to birth that into reality, okay? To be able to hold, no matter what is going on in the 3D right now, whatever your actual physical reality looks like, being able to hold that 5D vision and birth that into reality, and be able to, and this is why the first 2 stages are important, being able to embody that future version, embody that 5D, and know that it's done in the energy. Know that it is done, and it is simply waiting to show up in the 3D and in the physical. It is that trust and that surrender. So to have that deep embodiment, I thought that as well, Jo. Who is she? As I was saying it. Having that trust and that surrender, we can't do that if our nervous system doesn't feel safe. So this is why the Pleasure Queen and the Shadow Queen aspects are really important. And then we can move into the Quantum Queen. And I think for the ladies that have done quantum alignment, like a lot of you, I think, are so keen to, like, let's do energy clearing. Like, I want to do energy clearing, I want to learn energy clearing, I want to do this now. But until we've got those grounded roots in place, until we've done some shadow alchemy, then we're ready, then we can move into the energy. So remember, I've talked about this before, like a tree. The deeper the roots go of that tree, just like the Pleasure Queen, and maybe digging some roots up as the Shadow Queen and then planting them again, the higher the branches can grow. Because so many people are working in the 4D, they're not working in the 5D, they don't know it. They actually don't know it. And this was me, like, early on in my spiritual journey. I was just like, yeah, like, you know, whatever, like, comes in, wants to give me messages. I was, you know, getting readings from people who were working with the 4D, unknown for them. And my trauma, my wounds in my energetic field was a vibrational match for those negative energies that were sat in the 4D. So once we do shadow work, what it enables us to do is close down those wounds. So we are no longer a vibrational match for those energies and those entities that are not of the highest love and light, but we don't necessarily know it. And the reason we don't necessarily know it, and I won't get deep into this now, like, but we're going to go into this in Quantum Femme, the reason that we don't know it is because they will give us, I won't name them here because I will get in trouble, they'll probably kick me off again, but these certain energies, they will give you what you need. So they can access, remember, the 4D is higher than 3D. So they can access information. They can give you what you need, but in return, they're going to cause some kind of energy fuckery, okay? So this is why it's so important to do the shadow work. And Shadow Queen, like, before we become Quantum Queen, before we do any energy work, this is why we need to do it, because we're closing down those energetic wounds, okay? And then once we do that, we can work in the 5D and beyond. We can work with all dimensions, all timelines, the Akashic records. We can work with everything, okay? So everything is inside of ourselves, and everything is everything in energy. And that is what the Quantum Queen is all about. And this is, ultimately, it was that Quantum Queen energy that was the manifestation of the life that I manifested in 2 years. That was my 10-year vision. But I couldn't do that without the pleasure practices, without the embodiment practices, and without going deep into those shadows, deep into that Shadow Queen, into the sacred rage, into the anger. And I feel this a lot, like I really feel this sometimes, like going into certain online spaces, I can feel that suppressed anger. I can feel that the sacred rage and the shadow work and the somatic practices haven't happened. And it's like so needed. I can feel that energy. I'm very sensitive to it. So if you would like to know more about the 3 stages of Queen, we are going to be doing an entire week on Pleasure Queen, Shadow Queen, and Quantum Queen in Quantum Femme. Now, Quantum Femme has been simmering around for a while. I've kind of been channeling it through. And then I was shown, like, this is the time, this needs to get out there, because the embodiment work is so important. The neuroscience, the energetics, the shadow alchemy, and the embodiment, like all of this together is really important. And so I was called to create this container. So if you'd like to join Quantum Femme, I will put the link in comments. And it is a 21-day vortex, and for a limited time, the early bird is just £21 for 21 days of support. Now, when I ran the Soulfully Aligned program, that was run in exactly the same format, but it was at 333. So I'm doing exactly the same format, but I'm offering a super low early bird at the moment of just £21 for 21 days to really get these practices embedded. So how it's going to work is you're going to have a private Telegram channel where I'm going to share with you a transmission every day. And in that transmission will be it might be an activity for you to do, a meditation, an activation, a practice, a journaling activity, and each day will be themed for the week that we are in. So week 1 is going to be Pleasure Queen, week 2 is going to be Shadow Queen, and then week 3 is going to be Quantum Queen. So you're going to be working through and embodying all of those steps in order. And then I'm also going to be doing, so on the sacred rage point, I'm also going to be doing, I'm adding in, which is more than we had in Soulfully Aligned last year, I'm also going to be adding in a breathwork session in that Shadow Queen section. So you're going to have 3 live trainings with me in there as well, where I'll answer all your questions that come up for you in each week and each theme. And then under Shadow Queen as well, we're going to be doing some breathwork. So you're going to have the chance to actually take part and do a somatic release. And this is the cheapest way to do breathwork with me, because it's normally only available in my membership, which is $44 a month. But if you come in at early bird, you're going to get the chance to do breathwork for 21, plus the access to the 21 days of support as well. So I'm so excited. This has been coming up for me for a while, and this has been the most potent and powerful work for me and for my clients. And I'm just so excited to hold space for you in this way. So I'll pop the link below. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. And yeah, early bird, early, super early bird, just £21 for 21 days. So excited. And so many of you have signed up already. I think 8 or 9 spots have gone already at the time of me doing this video. So I'll look forward to seeing lots of you there, and I'm sending you lots of love to all you Pleasure Queens, Shadow Queens, Quantum Queens.